Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and Santokie, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash. The episode's coming thick and fast. You know, it's World Cup season. We're, 24 hours away? Pretty much just over 24 hours away from the big game. West Indies against New Zealand. All or nothing, ride or die on this game. You'd imagine it's a must-win for West Indies. It's certainly a must-win for New Zealand. The loss for them will eliminate things. So the stakes are high. And Mash, we're here to look at, who we think should be the 11 that go out to face New Zealand in this crunch game held in Trinidad. The first game held at the Brian Lara Cricket Ground in Trinidad. So West Indies have shifted from Guyana to Trinidad. It's gone from, chicken curry to curry chicken. Let's see if how the conditions will fare in Trinidad. I think at the moment, Mash, if I'm not mistaken, on your live show, we had Neeks, longtime follower of the pod. Neeks was live on Trinidad. He was saying it was raining. So obviously that will affect conditions tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would assume we'll get a game. Will it be a rain-affected game? Who knows? I think a lot of the people who listen to this episode will, of course, get in the comments and say this person should play, that person should play, no changes should be made, this change should be made, so on and so forth. But I think the real kind of question mark about this game, Santokie, is the fact it's a fresh pitch. Now, of course, people say, but West Indies are the home team. They should have a better understanding of how Brian Lara is going to play. But without the knowledge of any other team having played on it first, without any games to have watched to see how it's playing in the context of this particular World Cup. So, for example, to kind of put this in context, Santokie, Providence didn't play completely out of the ordinary in so much as you and I would have expected Providence to be a bit low, a bit slow, but it still played a bit more difficult than even I expected, I think is what I would say, right? So I'm reluctant to go on any kind of historical analysis of this is what usually happens at Brian Lara Cricket Ground because we don't know. We just don't know how the pitch is going to play. And in that context, Santokie, would you rather bat first? Now, bear in mind, West Indies' strength is their batting. Would you rather bat first and get first digs on the pitch to see how it's playing? Or would you rather bowl first to probably get a longer assessment? Does that even make sense? But to get an assessment as in what you might need to do when chasing down a total on the ground. It's in more ways than one, and this before we even talk about the fact it's basically a knockout game for New Zealand. In more ways than one, this is a tricky one to call.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mash. And I know speaking to a few fans in Trinidad, Brian Lara cricket pitch is an unpredictable sort of ground. I mean, if you look at when England toured in December, one game they played on the 19th of December, I think they posted 267 England when Phil Salt went mad. And then 2 days later, they were bowled out for 133. So the pitch within those 2 days changed dramatically. So going back to your question, I think traditionally, historically, I think West Indies have always done well chasing. When we know what we need to do, when there's a target, we tend to do better. So bearing in mind it is essentially a knockout game, I would back ourselves in a chase. I think if we bat first, there's a good chance we can put a big score if the pitch is conducive to that. However, to minimize any sort of risk, I'd rather we chase. Now, in terms of what sort of pitch we want to see, Mash, would I be right in saying my opinion would be, obviously, if we've got a fast pitch, a pitch that suits, fast bowling, that plays into New Zealand's hands. Just off the top of my head, they got Trent Bolt, Matt Henry, Lockie Ferguson. We know what those three can do. They got Tim Salvi as well. I know he didn't play in the last game, but they got that repertoire. We don't have that repertoire, that depth. I think if it's a slow pitch that plays, especially in Trinidad, that will play into the hands of a Kiwis saying Gudakesh Moti, Roston Chase. So for me, Mash, I don't know about you. You can come in on that. A slow pitch would favour West Indies in this scenario.
Do you know what? I need some after we've got a show going on right now, but I'm going to say I need some thinking time on that one because because West Indies are a big 6 hitting team, I do wonder if the West Indies team and the way we play, take out Roston Chase and Shea Holt for a moment, I think we like pace. Not like express pace, maybe even express pace. I actually think we like pace on the ball, and that it's easier for them to hit through the line with pace in terms of clean sixes. The lower, slower, trickier the pitch is, the more it takes out our kind of, not even hidden talent, but the more it takes out what our kind of biggest weapon, right? Which is, it increases the risk factor in hitting sixes. And I guess what you'd have to ask yourself on a lower, slower pitch is, which of our batters is most comfortable taking on slow bowling? You remember against Papua New Guinea, it was all they did was loft ones up outside off stump and just wait to see what we do with it, right? Yes, it was wicket to wicket. So it's a hard one, Santokie, because I guess effectively what you're saying is we've got the better spinners in Multi and Hussain, and this before even count Chase. And I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I wouldn't underrate Mitchell Santner, but I do think in Multi and Akil we've got the better spinners. But I think it's fair to say that New Zealand have the better pacers. But then people... Go on.
So, yeah, my rationale is, I agree with you. I think West Indies are better in terms of how we play our boundary hitting. We would prefer pace. However, I just think if you've got a pitch that favours pace, you've got Trent Bolt, even on Providence, Trent Bolt 2 wickets. He only went for 22 runs. You've got Trent Bolt, Lockie Ferguson, express pace, Matt Henry as well. I just think there's a chance, if the pitch does favour that pace, that we could see chaos in the power play from those three. And the style of play we do, where it's either go hard or go home, we could see early wickets drop. So I'd like to think, obviously, if we do face pace conditions, we can adapt to it. However, I just think there's more of a risk factor in playing that. In that, I can imagine quick wickets going in the power play. If the pace bowlers can sense something, I just think if it's something that favours spin, I just think the fact that we can get 12 overs out of Chase, Moti, and Akil, saying it would favour us. However, I agree, as you say, there's no point having a conducive pitch for spin bowling if our batters can't bat on it. So this is the dilemma for me. I just think, to minimise risk, I think in this type of game, I think a slow pitch would favour us. However, we have to deal with whatever the Brian Lara Cricket Academy throws up. So we're going to have to deal with it either way. I just think New Zealand's main strength, I don't think Santner's a world-class bowler, like you said. Other than that, they got Bracewell, I think, is a part-time spinner they use. I just think they're severely lacking in the spin department. They could bring in Rachin Ravindra for part-time spin, but again, they've got no world-class spinners. I just think with us having Moti and Hussain, conditions that suit them, that suit their style of play, could swing it in our favour. But
yeah, I hear that.
Go on.
No, I hear that. I think I hear your argument there. Let me throw a spanner in the works, though. This is another kind of factor in the consideration of the game which may negate team selection, which is pressure. It's about pressure. So far in this tournament, because we've played the two down bad sides, we've had no real pressure to deal with, unless people are willing to concede that the Papua New Guinea game was pressure. Maybe it was. If people are willing to concede that the Papua New Guinea game was pressure, some people aren't willing to concede that. But if they aren't conceding that, then we haven't faced any real pressure moments, any moments where we've got to be real clutch and see a game home. New Zealand have faced pressure moments and were found completely wanting against Afghanistan. And I think I said it on the live show yesterday. Obviously, we hope that we just get the job done against New Zealand. It doesn't have to go to Afghanistan. But I just look at New Zealand and think, okay, yeah, everyone says you're undercooked. Everyone says that you should have played some warm-up games. It looks like you've taken this squad one tournament too far. But I just don't know if New Zealand put two bad performances in a row. And if they don't put two bad performances in a row, let's just say they turn up for this game, it would be the first time in the tournament where we're actually being put under pressure properly by a side that can actually beat us. And it'll just be interesting to see if that happens, how we react to it, because we haven't seen it. And maybe this is the downside, Santokie, of starting your tournament against the two easiest teams, because it means that you don't really face that moment where you have to rise to the challenge.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I completely agree with you on that point. I think New Zealand generally aren't the side that are going to put in two down bad performances in a row. You'd imagine, firstly, the sentiment was they hadn't had enough game experience. A lot of their players were sitting on the bench in IPL. They didn't have that practice. They didn't play any warm-up games. So essentially there were cobwebs around the team. They needed to kind of get that match experience. They got it against Afghanistan, got licked down, bowled out for 75. However, Mash, we talked about even the Papua New Guinea match. Obviously, some people will say, for me, there was pressure at some points in that game. Some people will say there was no pressure. It was a straightforward win. The fact that after the game on our live show, we were saying this will be a wake-up call for West Indies against Uganda. We saw what West Indies did against Uganda. Surely getting bowled out for 75 in a World Cup New Zealand, there's got to be no bigger wake-up call than that. Surely they got to come now for this next game, especially knowing if they lose, they're eliminated. It's not even like they can say, all right, cool, we can take it to the next game. They're out. So everything's riding on that. Surely then New Zealand are going to come hard at us. And it's a test. It's a test we haven't had in this World Cup. Obviously, people can point to our form in T20 cricket. However, that's not a World Cup. That's not in front of home fans. We know Trinidad is going to be a night game. The fans are going to be there. If we start losing wickets or if performances dip, the fans are going to let the players know the pressure's going to be on. So it's how we deal with this. For me, I'll just say West Indies, for me, are still favourites to win the game. Not massive favourites, but I would put the ball in West Indies' court to be favourites just based on New Zealand were bowled out for 75. I mean, we're talking about it being a wake-up call, but it might not be a wake-up call. It might just be a down bad slide. They've got an age inside, and there's not really, looking in their top 4 or 5 batters, there's not really like a gun batsman where you're thinking maybe Glenn Phillips, maybe, but there's not anyone who you're thinking, wow, this guy could going to cause big damage. They're solid, consistent players. So we could see them continue that slump. So for me, I put West Indies as having the advantage. But again, Mash, you never know what pressure does. Pressure does funny thing to players.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal a phrase that Bromley's manager. I'm going to steal a phrase that Bromley's manager, Andy Woodman, used to me all through our successful promotion season just gone. He kept saying to me, when I'd interview him after matches, he'd always make reference to, he'd always say, Mash, it's all about who handles the moments better. When those key moments come, which squad has the mentality to handle it better? And I actually think that's all this game's going to come down to. Because it's such a crunch game, because it feels almost like a semi-final, and certainly is for New Zealand, there will be moments in this match in both sides' favour, whether it be, I don't know, a catch at long on or a catch at long off or on the mid-wicket boundary or whatever it might be, or there'll be a run-out chance that was more than a half chance. It'll be who manages those specific moments better that will probably indicate early in the match who's going to come clutch when it matters. Let's look at the team, Santokie.
Yeah.
The obvious thing to say, I'll just get it straight out of the way. The obvious thing to say is we've won 2 from 2. It's basically a knockout game. Clearly, no changes. But if there were to be changes, is there a change that would be made? I personally can't really see one, but if there, obviously injuries notwithstanding, if there were to be changes, who would come out and who would come in?
Yeah, so I think we'll go with the same 11. You don't change a winning formula in the World Cup unless there's injuries or it's forced change. However, if tomorrow, it's been raining, if you've got the dew factor there and the pitch is doing something, Obed McCoy could be a shout to come in, add some extra pace, get a bit of swing in there as well. So Obed McCoy could be a factor. Again,
but if you did, say you did that, who's coming out?
That's a tricky
This is why I can never answer this question, because every time I look at the bench, I'm like, well, Hetty could come in, yeah, but who for? Obed could come in, but who for? And so on and so forth. So let's just say, argument's sake, they're looking at the Brian Lara wicket today and obviously tomorrow at the time of the match. They're like, this looks like he'll suit somebody who can bowl change-ups, off-cutters, slower balls, Dwayne Bravo-esque. And they're looking at Obed McCoy now going, we need to get Obed in the team. But who's coming out?
That's an interesting one. It might have to be Chase, you know.
Yeah, so I thought that, and then I looked at New Zealand's lineup, and I was like, okay, let me just look at. I said, let me just look at New Zealand's lineup. Now, 4 of New Zealand's top 5 are right-handers. So I was like, well, maybe there's an argument to say you don't need Chase in the team. Obviously, 4 right-handers. We got Multi, we got Hussein, etc. But then, who is it? Chapman, I think, is 6. Bracewell is 7. And then I think Satner is 8. They're all left-handers. But then there's an argument to say, Santokie, if we're thinking about, boy, we need someone to bowl at number 6, 7, and 8, then we might have a problem. Like, I'm not sure that's how we're supposed to be approaching it, guy. Boy, we're gonna need to get 6, 7, and 8 out. But there are if you look at the top 8, including Satner, half of their top 8 are left-handers, the other half are right-handers. But the actual batters you expect to make the runs are right-handers. Or there's 4 right-handers in the top 5. So there's an argument to say you'd take Chase out. I don't see it happening, because if this is the crunch game we believe it to be, you're going to want someone who technically has the ability to bat through an innings. And there is, other than Chase, who you would want in a crisis situation. You don't really look at the rest of them thinking, yeah, you're my crisis guy. So I don't see Chase coming out. The only person I could see coming out, and I don't see this happening either, if Obed came in, is if you took out Romario Shepherd. I don't see that happening, by the way. But that's the only way I think you would get someone in. So I think it's just on change sides, Santokie.
Yeah, I think obviously Johnson Charles, a lot of people were split over our live show as to whether it was a match-saving innings or a disastrous innings. But the fact is that he was top scorer in the last game. You're not going to drop him. Obviously, a lot of people said Hope to come in. That could be, as I said, I don't think it will, but that could be a slight possibility. Maybe a Hope coming in for a Rutherford. We've seen so far Rutherford hasn't necessarily been needed as such in that batting lineup, but that's because we play Papua New Guinea and Uganda. So I don't think they'll mess with the lineup. I think we'll go with the same 11 and, continue that winning momentum. Part of sports is, that mentality. So these players have won 2 games, regardless of who the opposition were. They've won 2 games, keep up their momentum against New Zealand. But what we saying, Mash, what's the tactic then for Wednesday? It's going to be 1:30 in the morning for us over here. Weekday as well, not even a Saturday night anymore. So weekday, so got to pile up on that with your nephew, and then go to work straight after.
I'm not even. So my plan is to run home from school, get in about, I think I'll get in about 7:30. I'm going straight to bed, Santokie.
Oh,
I'm going to sleep from 8 o'clock through to about 1 o'clock. What does that give me? 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 hours. I'm giving myself a solid 5 hours sleep before this match, because once the match starts, Santokie, there's no sleep again, So we're going straight through. We're going straight through the night to work and back to home again. So people like us who are in the UK, we're risking it all for West Indies tomorrow night.
Risking employment, everything, job security, everything out here. So let's hope West Indies repay that faith with a big win. Obviously, if we win against New Zealand, puts us in a privileged position of being qualified for the Super 8s. We won't have to worry about the outcome of the Afghanistan game, even because I don't think you carry on points to the Super 8s, do you? So it doesn't really matter if you beat Afghanistan or not. So essentially, an Afghanistan game is essentially a dead rubber if we beat New Zealand. If we don't beat New Zealand, Afghanistan game becomes a net run rate battle. We have to get the win in that one. Pressure is on. Hopefully, we don't get to that situation. So as always, Mash, we rally behind the side. We'll be up Wednesday night, middle of the night, watching us against New Zealand. And firstly, we hope we get a game. We hope the rain subsides. And secondly, we hope that West Indies give us an iconic World Cup win and take us forward to the Super 8s.
Exactly. So people lock in. I don't even know what time it is in the Caribbean for that match, but certainly 1:30 in the morning, Thursday morning, for the UK listeners or watchers, I should say. And then look out for content. As soon as that match is not as soon as that match is done, at some point later on in that day. So if our rides are still open, we'll try and record something looking at that game. So we'll look out for some content, hopefully reflecting on the West Indies win. But either way, something will happen. But that's it from me and Santokie. That's the preview of the West Indies selection or West Indies New Zealand match. Obviously, get in the comments below. I think we're 50 people away from 9K subscribers on YouTube. So if you're watching this and you're yet to subscribe, click that subscribe button. like, share, etc. Find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon. Become a Patreon. I should always say that. You can support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast for as little as $1, whatever your currency is, at www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. Find us on Facebook. Find us in the Discord if you want to. Let us know. And yeah, that's us. Keep following the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Real recognize real. We'll see you soon.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.